Now, for this conference, we have a new concept that we put into place. We call it State of Play in a playful manner. It is actually a status update on specific topics. We have 2 states of play throughout the conference, but today we want to start with our co-partner, one of our co-partners from UNESCO, and I'd like to invite to the podium Dr. Anna Persic, Senior Policy Officer from UNESCO, to deliver her intervention and give us the state of play on the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Thanos, and hello to everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here on behalf of UNESCO, and also great to see the 4th edition already of this conference, which really, as Thanos was saying, means that there is interest, that we are keeping it up on the UN agenda, and that we collectively are trying to find the best way forward. So let me just see how this works. I would like to again thank Thanos, the UN Library, all of his colleagues and his team, UNU, UNDESA for bringing us all together. It's a bit of a difficult moment, and it wasn't as easy as it was in the past, but it really is a great pleasure to be here. And we do hope that this conference will continue yearly and regularly in the future as well. So we've heard really good welcoming addresses. I think most of the background has already been covered in those welcome addresses. But I would like to start the presentation by kind of situating us again in the context where we live and why this conference and the subject of this conference actually matter. We are in an evolving global context. Of course, we still collectively face a multiple of global challenges, including global environmental crisis, climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, growing rate of disasters. These are still around, and these are still affecting most of humanity. We do have at the same time a quite interesting and shifting global landscape in terms of some geopolitical tensions, with the trust in scientific knowledge and science in general decreasing, or at least trust in institutions that deliver science that are increasing. Then rapid technological advances, we've heard it before, with difference in benefits from those technological advances, in access to technological advances, in shaping those technological advances. All of that has huge impacts on the future of the humanity and also of the planet. We also have rising real risks of misinformation and disinformation. Dr. Lydia Brito talked about it a little bit in her opening remarks, but this is also something that really we need to tackle and address, particularly in this open science community. There is a growing focus on national security risks, and that growing focus also sometimes comes with the pushback against collaborations, openness, solidarity, and international relations, open international relations. So we do have to find the balance between the national interest, national security interest, and also openness and collaborations. We have very powerful new actors, such as subnational actors, non-state actors, private sectors, large technological and other companies that are shaping really the world that we live in. And they are beyond the usual state actors that also at the UN we are kind of used to deal with. So again, while the knowledge is being produced, while the knowledge is being communicated and disseminated, we also do have to address these new actors and try to find ways to collaborate with them as well. Most of today's knowledge is produced also by private sector. So we have to find a way to collaborate better between public and private sector and find ways to incorporate the principles of open science across the different entities that are producing knowledge today. And then again, as we heard, persistent disparities, inequities in research capacity, funding, access to knowledge. We see those expanding rather than decreasing. And it really is a critical moment to start tackling these issues, because the future is technological, the future is more and more scientific. We need a science culture across the world so that we can address those challenges in the future and also use the tools that the technologies are going to be providing for us. And here we come again to the central role of open science. As it was said before, and I'm not going to go into details in providing the arguments for open science, but the Pact for the Future, and very recently the statement that was released by the Secretary General's advisory body on science, state the importance of open science. And again, open science, not just in terms of opening up the outputs of science, meaning the publications or data, but also opening up the process of science. Who is engaged, who is involved, how do we engage different scholars, different communities, how do we also provide this dialogue with other knowledge systems, how do we make sure that as communities are also shaping the research agenda so that it can actually help them also in their daily lives. How do we evaluate science? How do we measure progress, impact, success? How do we award our scientists? All of these things kind of need to be put a little bit in the question if we really want open science to fulfill its promise and deliver all of these different benefits from individual to global level. We've heard the UNESCO recommendation on open science. I hope you all know about it. If you don't, please have a look. It really is a very good document. It has been negotiated by 193 member states, adopted by 193 member states of UNESCO in 2021. And it does provide this global framework and a global vision for what open science is and where it should be going. It gives us a definition, it gives us a set of values that really anchor open science. And I think it is really this circle of values that is the most important part of that recommendation, and actually was the part that was negotiated for the longest time, because it does give an idea of what open science is and how it serves the common good. So we are talking about fairness, diversity, inclusiveness, quality, integrity, collective benefits, and equity. Now, another interesting part of the recommendation is that it also pushes member states to evaluate progress that is made in the implementation of the recommendation every 4 years. The recommendation, as I said, has a shared definition, common set of values, but it also has 7 areas of action for the member states who have adopted it, going from raising awareness, creating policy environments, investing in infrastructure, in capacity, and kind of creating the culture of open science across the board. This year, 2025, marks the first time that the member states actually have to report back to UNESCO. This reporting is regular every 4 years. We have had a first attempt to kind of have a look at what's the state of play in the Open Science Outlook, which was produced in 2023, at the end of 2023. But now we also have these reports that are coming back from member states, where we will be going through those reports and trying to understand much more in depth what is happening in different countries, what progress has been made, and even more importantly, where are the barriers and the challenges. Throughout this past year, we've been working with different countries so that they can produce these reports. And we have been very encouraged by the interest from the different countries. The monitoring process in itself has been very, very useful, because it brought communities in different countries together to look into what they have been doing, which wasn't necessarily already in place. But we were also a little bit surprised to see that there is still a lot of misunderstanding of what open science is, how it functions, and that on all levels, from the policymakers to the individual researchers. So we still have a long way to go in terms of just raising awareness, talking to people, making them understand what open science is about, and kind of getting out of our open science community to those who are not necessarily in open science right now. So scientists working on different issues, policymakers working on in different areas, it is important to also talk to them so that we do see this shift and awareness raising on open science across the board. Now, just very briefly, we've heard already, we've had over 80 member states that have provided their reports so far. You have the response rates here. The encouraging part is that we've had, of course, countries from all different regions reporting to the recommendation. The biggest response from 30 countries from Europe and North America. These are the regions according to the UNESCO classification. But then we also had a pretty good response from Africa, up to 46% of the countries in Africa that actually responded to the survey. Asian Pacific, then Arab states and Latin America, from where we had the least number of responses, but still quite a good response from countries overall, which was kind of encouraging again in these challenging times. So in terms of some of the key messages that we had from the reporting, and as I said, we have just received all of these reports now. We are going through all this data and we'll have more going in the future. But we do see that the shared understanding is growing. The countries are involved in kind of disseminating the messages from the recommendation. It is translated in 21 languages across the world. However, we still do not see open science really as a norm. And as I said, a global understanding of what open science is still very much lagging behind. We do see that there are policies that are being developed across the world. But again, it's very much ad hoc. It's not very structured. There are policies that are more comprehensive, others that are just bits and pieces, some addressing certain issues, some addressing some other issues. Again, there's not a lot of coherence in this policy space right now. So there is going to be need to kind of provide more guidance into this policy space. Infrastructures expanding, but we do see an issue with equity and distribution of the different infrastructures. Capacity building is advancing. However, it is not across the board, and it's not in all institutions. Incentives, we are starting to see the beginning of an alignment with open science principles, but it's still absolutely, again, not the norm. Some innovations in open science practices, and some attempts of global cooperation, but not really very structured. Just very quickly, we do have that out of 68 countries that reported having science, technology, innovation national policies, 63 are actually saying that at least one element of open science is represented in their STI policy, which is an encouraging trend. However, we see that most of that relates to open access to scientific publications. And other elements of open science are really not that much represented. The dialogue with other knowledge systems, for example, are basically not covered in any of these documents. Some countries do say that they have integrated all elements of open science into their national STI policies. There are 28. We still have to go in depth, seeing exactly what these policies are. But again, encouraging trend is that we see it across the different regions. And then there are many countries who have specific legal frameworks for open science. But as I said, most of that are open science or open access policies at the national level. There are much fewer who have actually policies that either cover all four elements or are specific to open science. Very quickly, because my time is basically up, we do see that the shared understanding is growing. Lots of countries are now using multi-stakeholder approaches with their open science committees at the national level. that are actually tracking open science and trying to understand what open science is and how it works in the country. And we are happy to see that this monitoring process has also pushed for those national coordination as well, which is quite important. Countries have reported funding open science through existing research funding. Some have specific open science funding, but the amounts that have been reported are far from what would be necessary to really make open science a reality. We do see that infrastructures are expanding, a lot of IT-related infrastructures, a little bit less those that actually try to include participation of society at large in open science. But again, equity is an issue. 15% of member states do not have any national open science infrastructure. And even despite that, they do not have collaborations in place so that they can actually access infrastructures from other places. So this is something that we need to look into. Very quickly through the key challenges, and we've heard them before: insufficient infrastructure, capacity gaps, geopolitical constraints, concerns around intellectual property, research security, inadequate funding, and also high costs associated with open access publishing models that rely on article processing charges. So again, a very timely moment to meet in this conference to look into equity issues in scholarly communication and to reflect very deeply about what type of scholarly communication we need for the future to address those issues. And just with the last slide, we together, UNESCO together with the UN Library and with some inputs from WASPA, we started to reflect on a policy brief that would be part of our open science toolkit to really look into equity into scholarly communication. We want to understand and put on paper in a condensed kind of manner for policymakers a brief that would address the questions such as: why is equity in scholarly communication important? Why does it matter? What are the key equity-related challenges and systemic imbalances in scholarly communication? And what enables more equitable scholarly communication system, which would build on the UNESCO recommendation? So these are the three questions that we really want to address in this policy brief that we are posing to you during this conference as well. We will be collecting the inputs, reflecting on them, and putting them together in a draft that we hope to send back to the communities for consultation by the end of this year, so that we have something consolidated by mid next year that we can actually put forward to policymakers and other stakeholders. So with this, I thank you very much for your attention. I hope that we are going to have a good moment together during these 3 days. Reflect on these questions. We really need your input. And thanks again for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. And thank you for this wrap-up. I think it was very interesting to hear that we need to progress with raising the global understanding about open science. So it's quite interesting. And yes, we are working with UNESCO on this equity in scholarly communication, and definitely this document is going to go out to the communities for inputs and consultation once the backbone of the draft is sort of like created.